subject. March is Women's History Month, which gives us a hook to take a look at the life and work of D.C. organizer and activist Josephine Butler. We're coming up on the 25th anniversary of her passing in 1997, a thumbnail sketch of the first part of her life. She was raised by Brandywine, Maryland tobacco sharecropper parents in the 1920s. Miss Butler, one of 9 kids, tried to get an education against the violent resistance of white supremacists who wanted to keep blacks working in the fields. Her family moved to D.C. when she was 14. She became a laundress, but somehow she got the organizing bug. I'm not exactly sure. I want to find out from our guests. She ended up organizing America's first ever union of black women laundry workers. She went on to work in government cafeterias and organized those workers. She got blacklisted from government work, understandably, I guess you could say. Got tuberculosis, but somehow helped lead the integration of the Adams and Morgan schools, hence the name of our Adams Morgan neighborhood, and went on to educate thousands of children about the hazards of air pollution. And she was a lifelong leader in healthcare reform and co-founded the Statehood movement for the District of Columbia. And joining us to talk about the life and work of Josephine Butler are one of her nieces, Takima Taylor, and Steve Coleman, Director of Washington Parks and People and co-founder of the Josephine Butler Parks Center. Welcome to you both.
Hello, welcome. I'm sorry, thank you. And thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. Are you with us, Steve?
Thanks for having us.
Great. Good to have you.
Hey, Steve.
I'm assuming you both know each other.
We do.
For many years, I would think.
Takima
Taylor, give us a sense of what your aunt was like. What was your experience of her as a child and as an adult?
All right. So she has started like activism and everything before I was even born. So by the time I was born, it was like, this is your aunt. This is what she does, everything. By the time I was about, I think between 7 and 9, I used to be involved with a lot of different things in the city. And I was going to, it was outdoors. It was some type of festival. And my aunt said, my grandmother, her sister, Ernestine, was like, you should see your Aunt Jo. Lo and behold, I see this lady just moving, doing everything, trying to help everybody. And I said, Aunt Takima, Ernestine's granddaughter. And from there.
Yeah.
Hello. Oh yeah, and so I'm sorry. And then once that happened, every time the family would have something, or I was in the Girl Scouts, and it was a Black History program, and they were like, the people had to act out different parts of history. Well, I didn't have to act it out because I had someone who was part of history, and we had Aunt Jo. By the time she got there, we had already left, but the program was still going on. Did Aunt Jo leave? Nope. She told everybody that was there about, statehood and what she does, what she did. And I had an opportunity to do foreign exchange. And the first person I went to learn about it was my Aunt Jo. I literally would leave school and then go over and hang out with her and Grandma Hilda and just talk about what to expect when I go over there and everything. She just taught me to never listen to what people tell you about a country. Just go and form your own ideas. And that's about everything. Don't let what somebody else tells you guide what you do. You listen to what they say, but then basically take it as a grain of salt and blaze your own path, like I said about her.
Right. Real quickly, because we don't have a lot of time, I did a Google search for the name Josephine Butler, and the first name that came up with the suffragette and feminist from 19th century United Kingdom by the same name of Josephine Butler. How did Josephine Butler, your aunt, acquire her name?
All right. So she was married to Joe Brown, and then they divorced. And instead of, like, in this area, Jennifer is a big name because it comes down from Sir Daniel Jennifer. But she knew she had work to do. And instead of just going back to her maiden name, she just researched. And hey, well, I shouldn't kind of like research, but Josephine Butler was someone big in the UK as far as women's suffrage, doing everything for women. So she became the Josephine Butler of America.
I love it. It's really great. So it's a wonderful story. Steve Coleman, how did you come to meet Josephine Butler?
I came to meet Jo when she heard that I had this crazy idea to move the Joan of Arc statue that's in Malcolm X Park on Meridian Hill. And she was irate until she found out I wanted to move it to a more prominent spot. And the reason she was irate was that her mentor and her inspiration for becoming an activist was Paul Robeson, and who also obviously had been blacklisted. But Robeson had written an essay about the little girls who had the courage to change the world. The Joans of Arc who led the way, like Linda Brown, the 7-year-old girl who gave us Brown versus Board of Education. And she wanted that symbol kept. But that particular sculpture had special meaning for Jo as the co-founder of the Statehood movement in D.C. because it was a symbol of voting rights given by the women of France to the women of America, when the women of America, at least on paper, got the right to vote, and the women in France were still waiting. And from there, we worked together. We became partners in crime. The first thing we did together was Joan of Arc's 580th birthday party, dedicated to the modern-day Joans of Arc.
I mean, who wants to miss the 588th birthday party? I mean, yeah. Truly. That's a great story. So it's started off on a negative note. There's probably similar stories about a lot of people that met and became partners in crime, as you say. So she was involved in the creation of your group, Washington People and Parks. We're short on time, but just real quickly, talk about that if you would.
So as the daughter of sharecroppers and the granddaughter of enslaved people, Jo had this deep, abiding sense of the land, but also of the injustice, as Malcolm X talks about, every revolution being rooted in the land. She knew that if we don't have a say in the land we call home, we don't have a say, period. And so it was very much part of her assertion of self-determination to say that these federal lands need to be accountable to the people that they belong to. And so that started at Meridian Hill, Malcolm X Park, and spread to parks all across the city. Her vision was that the parks should be places of hope, of justice, of jobs, of food. I'm actually out here on one of the sites in Marvin Gaye Park right now where we have a food forest we're planting, where we've been growing jobs. There's so much we can do when we go outside and we demand equity in all of our land.
Right. I mean, particularly an inviting idea as the weather improves here in D.C. So you ended up being very involved, if not instrumental, in the creation of the Josephine Butler Park Center. Talk about that if you would.
When Jo died, I was the last one to speak at her memorial at St. Augustine at the bottom of the hill. And there was no time. The place was backed up. Nobody could move because the streets were shut down. I held up her hat. No one knew I had this hat emblazoned with her causes. And the whole audience rose with kind of a gasp. And you felt her spirit rising with that. And as I invoked her name, I said, we don't need a memorial to Jo. Our whole city is living tribute. And we are all here to carry on her work. I was with her the night she passed, 25 years ago, March 29. I've never seen a more determined face in my life, David. She was not done. And so the Josephine Butler Park Center emerged as an idea to carry on that work, not as a memorial, but a place to keep going. She would talk about big things that needed to happen to make the world a better place, like statehood. And people would say, well, that's going to take a long time. And she'd say, exactly. That's why we have to get started right now. And so that's the spirit of that stubborn, resolute, revolutionary patience that she brought to these mighty causes.
Wonderful. And are you doing something to celebrate her passing at the end of the month?
We're lifting up the living legacy of her life that carries on, and all of us across DC are her children. And so we're planting a Jo Butler Victory Garden where we're going to be bringing her ashes home with her family at the end of the month, and then infusing them with the land on Earth Day. This weekend, we're celebrating Seeds and Sprouts Day that she created, the spring equinox, to celebrate all young life. We'll be at the Strong Inn Gallery tomorrow night in Georgetown with Nadine Epstein, looking at two kick-ass women together, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Josephine Butler, and the parallels and interesting points their two overlapping lives.
I'm sure she's smiling, looking over all the ways that you're carrying on her ideals and her legacy. How can people get more information about Washington People and Parks and the Butler Park Center?
So Parks and People is at washingtonparks.net. We've worked in all 8 wards over the past 32 years, and we're all about lifting up and restoring the community partnerships in the land. We've done that at hundreds of playgrounds and trails and farm parks all over the city. And the Park Center is open. We're actually recreating Josephine's library as a ongoing inspiration for all of the growing activists in the city and beyond around the world. And the Park Center has a nickname that Jo would also have loved, which is the Embassy of the Earth. We kind of think the Earth needs an embassy right now. It was a thing that belonged to Hungary and Brazil and China, but never accessible to the people until now. And speaking of smiling, there's a photo of Jo in the lobby. It was taken by the Washington Post the day after the U.S. Senate resoundingly defeated voting rights for D.C. They want to get a picture of poor old Jo Butler giving up. And David, that photo is the most stubbornly joyful smile I think I've ever seen. She had no illusions that justice would happen overnight, but she knew eventually we would win. It just would not be in her lifetime. So it's on us.
Wonderful. We're out of time. Unfortunately, we could go on indefinitely, I'm sure. I've been speaking with one of Josephine Butler's nieces, Takima Taylor, and Steve Coleman, Director of Washington Parks and People and co-founder of the Josephine Butler Park Center. Thank you both for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
David, I'm sorry. I just want to say one other thing. Just women going forward, you all can be my Aunt Jo. If there's not a path for you already, light a match and blaze that path and keep on going.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you both for joining us.
You bet. Have a good one.